Former Ambassador to Indonesia Tony Kevin joins us now from Parliament House, our Parliament House studio. And Tony, thanks for your time this morning. Before we get your criticisms of what the search and rescue attempts have been in recent times, can you quickly just touch on the deal that's been struck and what you think of what the Minister just had to say?
The $4 million given to the Indonesians to improve their search and rescue technologies is obviously better than nothing, and it's good that there'll be an exchange of personnel. However, it's clear that Indonesia will always conduct an inferior search and rescue operation to Australia. This is for two reasons. Firstly, because they're less interested than Australia. They're glad to see the boats leaving Indonesia. Secondly, because Australia, when it's trying to find a boat, draws on the best available border security intelligence and technologies to find that boat, and we're obviously not going to give all that technology to the Indonesians.
And the discussions that have been had between politicians from both countries, if Indonesia's less interested, how are we to consider this latest announcement?
Well, I think we've got to go back to fundamentals. When asylum seeker boats send distress signals to the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, Australia has an obligation under not one but three international legal conventions, the Law of the Sea Convention, the Rescue at Sea Convention and the Safety of Life at Sea Convention, to proceed with all possible speed to the rescue, regardless of who sends a distress signal and regardless of where the boat is. We have shirked that obligation 4 times in the last 4 years, most recently last week. And as a result of us shirking that obligation, over 400 people have died. Now we're proposing to continue to do the same thing, that is to say, to bump, when we feel like it, distress signals to Basarnas, the Indonesian Search and Rescue Authority, which has only rescued one boat in the last 4 years, and that was when ABC reporter George Roberts was actually telling them where to go. Every other time they've failed, and I believe that there's a real question whether Australia is failing in its duty of care to people who send distress calls when they bump them to Basarnas, knowing that Basarnas will handle it badly and people will die.
Without going into an absolute blow-by-blow of what happened with this most recent case, can you give us your main criticisms of Australia's response to that boat that sank and subsequently 100 people died?
Yes, I can tell you very quickly. It sent its first distress call from 8 nautical miles off the coast of Indonesia, namely within the Indonesian 12-mile territorial sea. It sent another distress call 45 minutes later. We don't yet know in the public sector, in the public arena, where that came from, but it will be important to know because the boat was reported as having had engine failure and filling with water, so it probably capsized very soon thereafter. We also know from survivor reports that it stayed afloat then for 5 or 6 hours, and we finally know that that survivors left the boat and were in the water. In other words, the boat sank at 7 o'clock a.m. Now, we can reconstruct a drift line from that. We know that the boat was drifting away from shore. It must have very quickly gone out of Indonesian territorial waters into international waters. And the important thing is that it was floating as a capsized hulk for up to 6 hours, easily visible from the air, and we did nothing during those 6 hours. We simply left it to Indonesia. And they, in fact, started late in the morning. They only searched for 2 hours and they went home. And we didn't get involved in the search and rescue until that evening, Wednesday night. And so in practically 24 hours was wasted. 100 people died, whose lives could have been saved had we activated a prompt and efficient search and rescue response with the available resources we had, which we had very close by.
Mr. Kevin, is this a systems failure or is it something to do with attitude?
Well, it's both. It's a systems failure that starts with an attitude that our Border Protection Authority is not responsible for search and rescue and not responsible for safety of life at sea. That is quite wrong. It needs to be challenged. We saw that attitude expressed quite defiantly and truculently in the Christmas Island coroner's inquiry after the shipwreck at Christmas Island, which was clearly the result of an intelligence failure. A boat coming in was missed. We did not put our boat back on station. We had it doing second-order duties for 17 hours behind the island, looking after the hulk of an empty boat, when it should have been out there on station watching for incoming boats during a period when radar was down and aircraft surveillance was impossible. In everything that Border Protection Command does, it seems to put safety of life at sea absolutely last. And that is disgraceful, because these are human beings. They have families, many of them in Australia. They have a right to life. When they send a distress call, they have a right to that call being treated in exactly the same way as any other distress call sent to the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. Instead, they are consistently given second-class treatment, and as a result of that second-class treatment, many people die.
From your professional experience and from what you've heard about this new deal, do you think it will save lives?
That all depends really on the attitude in AMSA, Australian Maritime Safety Authority, and in the Department of Customs and Border Protection. They have the intelligence that comes in on boats. They have absolute top-notch technology. If somebody has a satellite phone on a boat which is switched on, even if they're not telephoning, we can track where that boat is. We can always find boats when we want to. The question is whether we want to find them when we know they're not going to reach Australian waters. Or do we think, well, that's another one we don't have to worry about? I'm not making that accusation, I'm just asking that question. But I am saying that the record over the last 4 years of 4 occasions on which distress signals have been sent to AMSA and AMSA has shrugged them off is scandalous. AMSA has the blood of over 400 people. AMSA and the Border Protection System have the blood of over 400 people on their hands.
One last one, very quickly. I'll slightly rephrase that. Do you have any faith in the system to start saving more lives?
Angus Houston, the Houston panel, reminded the Border Protection System and AMSA of their safety of life at sea responsibilities very recently. In attachment 3 to the Houston report, it sets out quite clearly what the obligations are. I hope that there will be parliamentary scrutiny and media scrutiny of these issues so that hopefully the performance will improve.